guys, Matt Lemke here with 3Gamer Goggles, gamer-goggles.com, and today on this episode of Roleplay Ramblings, installment number 2, or episode 2 of season 2. Well, technically it's kind of season 3. First year I didn't name it, I just did it on the role of character. Anyway, today's planting seeds, and this kind of ties into the last episode, only in the sense that it usually works better with good note-taking. So what do I mean by planting seeds? For me, seeds is a lot like foreshadowing. Both the players and the GMs can do it, but we're primarily going to focus on the GM's role of foreshadowing or planting seeds because it's more important. So we're going to back up a step and we're going to take a look at my philosophy of telling a story in visual aid. Well, this is actually chives. The flower of, this is garlic. Nope, I lied, this is a leek, my bad. And I dipped it in varnish, this makes a good little treat. But that's kind of my philosophy on role-playing and telling a story. You start off with your baseline from A to B, and at the top, it kind of explodes into all these other little branches and things. Let me see if this works better. Yeah, that works a little bit better. All these little branches and all these little plot points, right? So how do you get all those plot points back to the end of the story? That's the trick of role-playing, I think. And good GMs can do that, and they do that on a regular basis. Now, I should say that planting seeds and stuff really is for the homebrew game, or a large sandbox game like Rise of the Rune Lords, where there's a lot of flexibility for things to happen in different orders. I mean, this is kind of a linear adventure, but this campaign setting book, it's an adventure path, gives you a lot of room and flexibility to play and create things to happen. So planting seeds is a process of bringing something to life. So if you're a gardener or a farmer, or you planted any plants in your life, you know that you add water, put it in the sun, and it grows. That's the basic concept here. You plant a seed, maybe the player takes a note on it, or you take a note on it because you decided it was influential or an important part of your story, and it comes together. But some of the tricks are, you plant a seed within, you plant a lot of seeds, is what I should have said. You plant a lot of seeds and hope for some really great things to sprout from them. Now, the idea of a story is for the whole tree, and sometimes the seeds fall to the ground, which that's okay, because some of those seeds that you planted that fell to the ground and didn't stay within the tree or become a new branch of the tree, I should say, they can be other episodes for later on in the characters' careers or totally different game paths. So don't worry about planning something that people found interesting but you don't get back to, because there's always that chance that you'll come back to it as with not necessarily another group, but another group of characters. What I like to do is I kind of create my storyline. I like to write, so I tend to create stories in a linear fashion, but I create parallel paths to get there, and that's why I kind of use the tree. So, for example, I'm playing a Rifts campaign right now with some people, and I actually have 18 different factions in this campaign setting, or the sandbox that I've created for Rifts. And basically, there's just one location that's I'll call the bar. We just call it the bar for now, and all these melting pots of storylines kind of come in here to play with one possible. I mean, there's actually several possible outcomes in this example because there's so many different factions. But generally, what my players tend to do is they get turned on to one, and then they try and work it from A to B with all these other influences like you have in real life, kind of pulling and tugging them to maybe explore different options. And I think that makes it a lot more realistic for the players and gives them a lot more tension of, oh, but we have to stay focused on this. And you kind of, with a game like Rifts where the alignments are a little bit freer and looser than they are in Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, it helps you learn a little bit more about their motivations when they have more options. So the trick then is using, okay, so now you've got this path over here where there's a drug ring, but you started this path of slave trade. How does this tie in and come back? And generally what I do is I leave those seeds open-ended, so that they can somehow get back. Maybe the slave trade was being used somehow to help push the drug ring, or the drugs were, being used to drug the slaves so that they could be kidnapped and then sold on the black market. Now, like I said before, not every seed is going to be a seed that matures, at least not necessarily with the current group. So there are a lot of gems that kind of come out of this when your players fuel them. And that is why you plant a lot of seeds, because you might plant something, and some of these seeds that you plant might only be for one player. But it's something that helps you discover their interests and helps the players discover their interests too. So I guess the next step would be pruning. How do you cut out the dead? Or what's not growing? Because you don't want that distraction there anymore. And the simplest way is to put some closure on some things. So your players, this would primarily work on something that really got your players off track. And that is one of the dangers to planting a lot of different seeds in your campaign, is that your players can go way out into left field off camera, and then get sidetracked on this adventure path, and you're like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Which is a little frustrating when it happens, but you can always put closure on it. Let them succeed. Don't force them back to the other storyline. Don't force them back by not letting it have closure, because if they want closure on it, it's something that's important to them as a group and as a community. I think it's your duty to let them finish it and reward them. Now, in the finishing process and the rewarding, you can always plant more seeds to bring them back to the storyline that you've created. And that's what I think you have to remember with the planting of the seeds. You are the creator and the controller of your storyline. Your players are a part of that storyline. Players are there because they want to have fun with their characters in helping tell this story as a community event. At least most of them. And as players, many of them, not all, because there's rules lawyers and jerks and morons, because that's just the way humans are. Too bad we can't play with a whole bunch of elves, right? Oh man, what a bunch of snobs they'd be. But the point is, for the most part, people are there to work together, not against each other. And with you having the ability to control and drop seeds, you need just to learn to be picky a little bit, so that you can keep your story on track. In other words, once you plant a seed, and the players have started to water it a little bit by showing and expressing interest, you shed light on it. You open up some more doors to reveal that path to them. That is what your job is. And there's a lot of different ways to do this, and it's just, it could be something as simple as, hey, in Rifts, you found an ID chip card. Hey, my players found a phone number in one of the games that we're playing right now. And they find it to be important, and I haven't figured out what it does yet. I have no idea. They asked about a phone number. I said, okay, you found a phone number in this guy's PDA, and I wrote it down, and they're still asking me for the phone number 2 sessions later, so I got to do something with it. What am I going to do with it? I really don't know. No clue yet. Now, the other way to cut out the dead is just to kind of kill the storyline altogether, which I think is a little obtuse. If your players have expressed interest in it, well, if they haven't expressed interest in it, it's going to kill itself off. And I think that's kind of what you want to do. You want to put things that are, you want to put clues in front of your players that'll pull them away from them and let them do your work for you. That's really what you want to do. Because then, see, the art of a good GM, I think, in a lot of ways, is letting the players think that they have control of the game when they don't necessarily have control of the story. I mean, it is a group effort. So, to some degree, there is a lot of things, there's a lot of give and take. But in the end, it is still your story. You created it. It's your plot points. Do you want a campaign that goes on for 10 years? Hey, play for 10 years. Give them all the freedom in the world you want. Do you want something that's going to be finished in a year? You need a little bit more tightness to how you give your clues. Some of those clues again, boom. Now for players, planting seeds, I think, one of the best times to do that is downtime. And why do I think that? That's because downtime is when you get your like one-on-one time with your GM. Not every player wants downtime, and some players use downtime differently. I think it probably varies from role to role of character class. I don't play too many wizards. I'm sure that their research time is a lot different than the rogue's downtime, where the rogue can actively go out and burgle and stuff, right? But this gives you an option to plant other seeds that are player specific. And that's important because there's so many times when a group kind of gets stuck with the clues you've given them. And as a GM one-on-one with downtime, you have a chance to reinvent some of those same clues and make them more significant to the player's personality and their role in training. So you might say something that kind of goes over a rogue's head in a group when you're role playing. Like I can't even think of anything right now. Oh, like this key unlocks a secret vault. So somehow the rogue gets his hands on it, and in downtime he's examining it and appraising it, and he realizes what it actually does. So you've taken a clue, you've given somebody who should have more information on it the tools they need necessary to understand that it probably does this. Now, players should also plant seeds to the GM. And GMs, this is where you need to learn to listen. I realize that, yeah, it's your story, you kind of created it. Unless, of course, you're playing in a sandbox, then it's not your story and you didn't create it. But even in a sandbox story like Rise of the Rune Lords or the Dungeons and Dragons 5th Ed ones that have been so popular for the Underdark and for Tiamat, that whole series was pretty phenomenal. There's so much room for the players to grow that you need to listen to what they want planted. Player says, I think I used this last session too, player goes, I'm thinking about dual wielding. Or, I'm thinking about, this is a great example as to why you should listen as a GM. Playing a cleric. He wants to take a feat that allows him to turn more undead. As a GM, there should be a red flag there for you. Not so much a red flag, but at least a yellow flag that says, oh, hey, this guy's thinking about making a choice that could really impact my story. Or could make this cleric, this player, feel worthless because there's no undead in this campaign. So what do you do as a GM? You talk to the player and say, hey, that might not be a good idea. Or you let the player go ahead and do it, and you change your campaign a little bit to include more undead so that they didn't make a terrible decision. Either way, I think you need to discuss it with the player. And that is why planting seeds and listening to them being planted is important, both for players and for GMs. I think the role of planting seeds is more importantly done, or more largely done, by GMs, because it's kind of like the process of dropping clues, right? And players need to listen. But as a GM, it's up to you to cultivate those seeds and shed the light on them to let them grow. Uh, and then as players, it's up to you to let your GM know that these are the things you plan on doing. I wouldn't keep anything a secret from, well, maybe some things. I mean, you don't have to tell, you want to rule the world. You don't have to tell them that. But you should, character development and things that can impact the storyline, I think you kind of should discuss those with your GM so that you have a fuller, more heroic experience or anti-hero experience within the game. Now, coming back to the philosophy of the tree, I believe that there's more than one path to get to the end of the story. I think you start off with that linear. I think that's just the way role-playing works. You start off, you meet, you kind of go off on this adventure, you maybe go off on another adventure, you get some clues, and then it kind of blossoms like the tree does, and there's different paths to pick. Now, when you climb a tree, there's no one way to get to the very top. There's a lot of different branches to pick, and that is the art of role-playing within a group. You come and you play in the sandbox of the branches, and you climb to get to the top by picking the right seeds and the right paths to get there. Thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe to me. Let me know what you thought of this. If it was good for you. If not, I'm really trying to work this community thing. My Kickstarter is probably live by now, and all these role-playing ramblings are going to be posted in the next 2 weeks. All 6 or 8 episodes this year. I waited a long time to do it this year because I had a lot of things rolling around, and I wanted to do it during my Kickstarter so people could see the value that this brings. But anyway, check out my Kickstarter. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a great holiday season. Later.